You ever feel the earth move beneath your feet without warning? That was the day Brianna told me she was pregnant. At first, I thought it was a blessing. We'd been together since high school, built a life that felt like a small, quiet miracle, 2 kids from rural Georgia trying to make good. I was 26, working at a diesel repair shop. My uncle helped me get into after-trade school. Solid job. Honest work. Every Sunday, I mowed our little lawn while Brianna watered her mom's peonies in the flower bed. We were simple folks. Or I thought we were. The news hit me while I was changing brake pads on a Chevy Silverado. She showed up out of nowhere, said we needed to talk. Her hands trembled, eyes red like she'd already been crying. She said, "Lucas, I'm pregnant." At first, I smiled. I mean, damn, we weren't planning it, but we'd always talked about having kids. She didn't smile back. "There's more," she whispered. That's when the ground shifted. I don't remember sitting down, but I was on the shop floor, grease on my jeans, my heart suddenly cold. "It's not yours," she said. There was a silence that stretched so wide I could feel my ribs shake. She said she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that it just happened. When I asked who, her voice cracked. "Nate," she said. "It's Nate's. My brother. My own damn brother." And right there, in that moment, something in me broke clean in half. But it wasn't the worst part. That came later, when I told my parents. And they chose him. Over me. I sat at the edge of my parents' porch, still in my work clothes, engine grease dried into my skin like a second layer of betrayal. I told them everything about Brianna, about Nate, about the baby. My hands trembled like they were trying to shake the memory out of me. Mom didn't cry. Dad didn't get angry. They just got quiet. Finally, my mom sighed like she'd been carrying this secret too. "Honey," she said, "sometimes life throws tests at us. Maybe this is God's plan." God's plan? My brother slept with the woman I was going to marry and knocked her up, and now it was divine intervention? I looked at my dad, praying for at least a flicker of outrage. All I got was that cold, tired stare he reserved for drunks at church who missed their alimony payments. "What's done is done," he said flatly. "You gotta find it in your heart to forgive." And then Mom added, "You can't turn your back on your family. Nate feels awful. He's willing to step up." That was the moment I realized they'd known. Maybe not the whole time, but long enough to make peace with it. Long enough to brace themselves for the fallout. "You're taking his side?" I asked, voice low, cracked. "We're not taking sides," Mom said, like that settled it. "He's your son too," Dad added. "So am I." I shouted louder than I meant. The screen door rattled behind me. A neighbor peeked through their blinds across the street. I didn't care. "Lucas," Mom said, her tone now brittle, "don't make this harder than it has to be." Harder? It got real clear, real fast. This wasn't about right or wrong, it was about comfort. About keeping the peace, no matter who got shattered in the process. A week later, they asked me to leave. Said I was bringing too much negativity into the house. I walked out with a duffel bag and a heart so hollow it echoed when I breathed. The first night out of the house, I slept in my truck behind the old rail yard. No heat, no pillow. Just a crumpled hoodie, an empty wallet, and the sound of my own breathing, sharp, uneven, like it was trying to fight off panic. I'd never been homeless before. Never been truly alone. Not like this. The shop let me go the next morning. "Too much drama," they said. "Personal matters are affecting your work." Translation: Nate was already in talks to take my spot. My own blood, as if stealing Brianna wasn't enough, he had to take my paycheck too. I sat in the diner across from the gas station that day, nursing a refill I couldn't afford. Watching Nate and Brianna pull up together in his truck, the same one Dad gave him when he turned 21. She had her hand on his shoulder as they walked in. Laughing. I don't remember leaving. Just remember the cold. And how quiet everything got in my head. I stayed gone. Vanished from town like smoke. Didn't answer texts, didn't check Facebook. Nobody looked for me, really. Not family. Not friends. I was the angry one, the bitter one who couldn't let go. That's the story they told themselves. Easier than admitting what they allowed. I spent a few weeks on couches, in borrowed basements, once even a condemned trailer with no electricity. Every night I stared at the ceiling and thought about what Nate must have said to convince her. What lies Brianna told herself to sleep next to him. What my parents saw in him that made betrayal easier to accept than my pain. I didn't scream. Didn't punch holes in walls or get drunk and reckless. But something inside me was changing. Quietly. I stopped being the man who begged for love. And I started becoming the man who didn't need to ask. A guy I barely knew, Caleb, let me crash in his workshop for a while. Just a cot in the back of his metalworking space, tucked between shelves of rusted tools and half-finished welds. But it had heat. Running water. Silence. In that quiet, I started rebuilding. Not with blueprints. Not with some grand plan. Just one decision at a time. I shaved the beard that had grown wild on my face, stared into the mirror and said, "You're still here." Not with pride. Just fact. Picked up odd jobs wherever I could. Construction, hauling scrap, cleaning out foreclosed homes. Dirty work. No benefits. But it paid. And more importantly, it kept my mind moving. I started keeping a notebook. Not a journal, nothing dramatic. Just names. People. Patterns. Who looked me in the eye and who didn't. Who stayed silent when the rumors spread and who repeated them. You learn a lot about folks when your life falls apart. Meanwhile, word spread fast in town. Nate and Brianna were starting a new chapter. My parents hosted a cookout welcoming the new baby. Pictures went up on social media like nothing had happened. Smiles. Balloons. Ultrasound prints on the fridge I once stocked with groceries. They never mentioned my name. Not once. Erased. Forgotten. It burned at first, then something shifted. I realized they needed me to disappear. My presence was a threat to the lie they were living. The truth made them uncomfortable. So they rewrote it. But I wasn't gone. I was just getting quiet. Focused. And I was watching every damn thing they did. Because one day they'd need something from me. And when they came knocking, I'd be ready. In a town like ours, memory is selective. Folks forget your face the minute your name stops getting brought up in church. And when you don't show up at potlucks or wave from the hardware store parking lot, people assume the worst, or worse, nothing at all. I leaned into that. Let them think I left. That I disappeared somewhere upstate. That I couldn't handle it. In truth, I was just 20 miles out in a town no one cared to drive through, working under a mechanic named Daryl who didn't ask questions and paid in cash. I fixed up busted engines by day and studied small business licenses by night. I didn't just want a job anymore. I wanted leverage. I learned how to register an LLC, how to manage credit, how to keep assets under the radar. I bought an old trailer on a patch of land nobody wanted, cash deal. It needed everything. Plumbing, walls, insulation. But it was mine. The address wasn't even listed properly in the system. Perfect. That first night, I sat on the porch with a busted lawn chair and a bottle of off-brand whiskey, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost. I wasn't healed. Not even close. But I was moving. Meanwhile, I checked in on Nate and Brianna from a distance. Quietly. Sometimes through mutual friends' public posts. Sometimes through dummy social media accounts. I wasn't stalking, I was documenting. Dates. Purchases. Patterns. Because the thing about liars? They get comfortable when they think no one's watching. Brianna had already started complaining about Nate in hushed comment threads. "He's trying, but it's hard," she'd post. "We've been through a lot." And I'd screenshot every word. Not for revenge. Not yet. But because I knew eventually this whole house of cards would come crashing down. And I'd be the one standing at the end. 2 years passed. That sounds like a long time, but when you're rebuilding from ashes, it moves slow and quiet like healing bones under skin. I'd built something by then. Not just the trailer, which I'd turned into a livable space with my own 2 hands, but a life. Small contracts, repeat clients. I'd even started my own mobile repair service, Martin Diesel Works. Simple logo. Clean paperwork. No debt. I had stability. Solitude. Peace even. But peace doesn't mean forgetting. Every so often I'd hear whispers from back home. My cousin Jen would drop a line, "You heard about Nate?" No, I'd lie. They're struggling. Real bad. He drinks too much. Brianna's working nights at the diner. Not the life they painted on Facebook. I'd smile without smiling. Because poison always tastes sweet at first. Turns out Nate never wanted to be a dad. Not really. That baby girl, she was just a symbol to him. A trophy of conquest. Proof he'd beaten me. But when she started crying at 3 a.m. and bills piled up, the thrill wore off. He got mean. Got sloppy. Jen said Brianna had a bruise she blamed on walking into a cabinet. Classic line. I didn't swoop in. Didn't text. Didn't gloat. I watched. And waited. Because that's the thing about people like Nate and Brianna. They don't fall fast. They fall in stages. Quietly at first. Then all at once. By year 3, Nate was arrested for a DUI. Brianna moved back in with her mother. My parents, the ones who said it was God's plan? Their business failed. My dad's back went out. They lost the house I grew up in. Suddenly, the people who discarded me were crawling back to the surface, looking for something. And I knew exactly what it was. Me. The son who worked with his hands. The one they thought they could do without. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. It started with a letter. Folded, handwritten, trembling cursive like it came from a woman who hadn't held a pen in a while. Lucas, it read, "We miss you. Things haven't been easy. Your father's been sick. Nate's not himself. Please come see us. Love, Mom." I stared at it for a long time. Folded it up. Tucked it in the junk drawer next to expired coupons and a wrench I never used. 2 weeks later, it was a phone call. "Lucas?" Dad's voice. Raspy. Old. We could use your help, son." That son tasted like acid. But I said nothing. Just listened. Turns out the bank was taking their rental. My dad's social security was tied up in medical paperwork. Mom was working part-time at the church, meaning cleaning pews and trying not to cry in the sanctuary. Nate was in rehab, though not for long, they said, like shame was more urgent than healing. They needed someone who could help. Someone who understood the system. Someone who could fix things. And just like that, they remembered I existed. It wasn't love. It was desperation. I said I'd think about it. That night, I walked out to the field behind my trailer and stared up at the stars. Cold wind biting my skin, hands shoved deep into my jacket. I wasn't the boy they broke anymore. I was a man with a business, with independence, with a backbone they'd never bothered to look for. And they were broke. Fragile. On the verge of ruin. Part of me still ached for them. That's the thing about being raised to be loyal, the reflex to help never fully dies. But something inside me whispered louder now. They made their bed. And I'd be damned if I was going to make it for them. Not without a price. I showed up unannounced. Pulled into the gravel drive of my parents' new rental, a tired little house slouched under a weeping pine tree, front porch steps warped and flaking. It looked like the kind of place where pride went to die. Mom answered the door. For a moment, she just stared like she was seeing a ghost. "Lucas, see." "Hey, Ma." She opened her arms like I was 10 again, scraped up from a fall. I didn't move. Inside, the place smelled like regret and off-brand candles. Dad was in his recliner, thinner than I remembered, wrapped in a blanket, I sunken. He tried to stand when he saw me, then thought better of it. "Look at you," he croaked. "You look strong." I didn't say anything. We sat. They talked. They told me everything that had gone wrong, like it just happened, like it wasn't their own hands that pulled the wires out. Brianna left Nate. Took the kid. Moved states away. No contact. Nate got clean, relapsed, clean again. They didn't know where he was now. The business was gone. Foreclosure. Debt. Nothing left but each other and me, suddenly as if summoned by a memory of better times. "Lucas," Mom said softly, "we're not proud of how things happened. We didn't know what to do back then." I nodded slowly. "And now?" She hesitated. "We were hoping you'd maybe help us figure something out. Get back on our feet." My dad cleared his throat. "We raised you right. Taught you how to be a good man. We know you've done well." There it was. They didn't want me back. They wanted what I'd built. I stood. "I'll think about it," I said. "And I will. But not in the way they think. Because this time, I'm the one writing the terms." I didn't go back for weeks. Let them sit with uncertainty. Let them wonder if the door they'd slammed in my face might reopen. That kind of waiting? It humbles people. Meanwhile, I got to work. Quietly. I pulled every public record I could find, their debts, liens, outstanding utilities. I contacted the landlord of their rental through a proxy, asked a few harmless questions about the property. Turns out they were already 3 months behind on rent. And I didn't just want to say no. I wanted them to feel the weight of how I said it. So I created a proposal, a formal one, typed, bound, clean. A list of what they'd need to agree to in order for me to assist. A notarized statement acknowledging they turned me out. A public letter to the church committee, the same people who watched them praise Nate's redemption, admitting what they did. No contact with Nate on my behalf. Ever again. Full financial transparency. Bank statements. Credit history. And most important, they would never, under any condition, refer to me as their blessing. They gave that title away a long time ago. I delivered it in person, wearing a jacket they used to call too sharp for a mechanic. Mom read the first page and started crying before she hit point 3. Dad turned red, then pale. This is cruel," he said, voice trembling. "No," I said calmly. "This is honest. Something we haven't had in this family for years." "You want to humiliate us?" he spat. I leaned forward. "I want you to feel what it's like to earn something back from someone you buried." Silence. "You asked for help," I said. "This is the price." I left them with the folder. They had 1 week. After that, the offer vanished like the sun they once threw away. 6 days passed. No word. On the 7th, I found an envelope on my trailer's step. No stamp. No signature. Just my name written in my mother's shaky hand. Inside? All 5 conditions. Signed. Notarized. The church letter was typed on official stationery addressed to the leadership committee that once called me wayward for not forgiving Nate. It was short, humble, brutally clear. We failed our son. We chose comfort over truth, appearances over accountability. We pray he forgives us, though we do not deserve it. I read it 3 times. Then I burned it. Not out of rage, but because I didn't need them to perform guilt. I needed them to sit in it. Alone. Without applause or redemption. I never told them I received it. I let them wonder. Let them stew in silence, the same silence they gifted me when they turned their backs and locked the door. 2 nights later, Mom showed up at my trailer. She knocked. Polite. Hesitant. Like a kid scared of her own reflection. When I opened the door, she didn't say anything for a long time. Just looked around. At the place I'd built from the wreckage. Her eyes landed on the photo by the window, me and Grandpa Joe, before the world got complicated. "This is nice," she said quietly. I didn't invite her in. "You came all this way to say that?" She swallowed hard. "No. I came to say I'm sorry. For not being your mother when it mattered. For making excuses when I should have stood up." She looked so small standing there, hands twisted in her coat sleeves. "You don't owe us help, Lucas. We know that now." I nodded once. "Good." Then I closed the door. Not in her face. Just enough to let her know this version of me has boundaries. Walls. Teeth. She left without another word. And I knew then. I'd already won. But the best part? They didn't know what real revenge looked like. Not yet. It was Nate. Of course it was. I hadn't seen his number in years. But there it was, glowing on my screen like a sickness trying to crawl back in. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. His voice was slow, strained, like he was trying to sound sober. "Lucas, man, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I messed up. I was in a bad place back then. I didn't know what I was doing. I sat in silence, phone in my hand, every muscle in my jaw clenched. I miss you, man," he went on. "I miss my brother. We used to be." I deleted it. Then I poured myself a drink. That voicemail wasn't for me. It was for him. For the Nate who needed to believe he could erase betrayal with a string of rehearsed words and a trembling voice. But apologies don't mean a damn thing when the blood on your hands came from family. And Brianna? She popped up in my inbox 2 days later. A message titled, "Can we talk?" No greeting. No warmth. Just her trying to act casual. Like she didn't take a match to everything we were building. She wrote about how hard things had been. How Nate was never who she thought he was. How she felt confused back then and pressured to make choices quickly. Then she dropped the line I was waiting for. "I think about you sometimes, about us. I wonder what would have happened if I'd done things differently." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I responded with one sentence. "What you did wasn't confusion, Brianna, it was clarity." Blocked her after that. Because this wasn't a story about second chances. It was about remembering exactly who people showed you they were and never letting them rewrite the ending. I didn't retaliate with fire. I didn't show up yelling or slashing tires like some heartbroken kid looking for a scene. I just started making calls. Quiet ones. The kind that matter. A buddy of mine from the diesel trade, Everett, had moved into real estate investing. He owed me a favor. I told him about a foreclosed property I knew was about to hit the market. It had a cracked foundation, bad wiring, and a leaky roof. But it sat on 2 acres right next to my parents' struggling church. He bought it cash. 3 weeks later, he sold it to me for $1. Then I donated it publicly to a local shelter. In my name. Not the church's. Mine. A big ribbon cutting. A reporter showed up from the county paper. They asked why I gave it away. I looked dead into the camera and said, "I believe in helping people who've been cast out by the ones who were supposed to love them." The story ran front page. That Sunday, I heard the sermon was about humility and the prodigal son. Mom didn't show up to church after that. Dad stood alone in the back, looking like a ghost in a flannel shirt. Meanwhile, I filed the documents to legally remove both my parents and Nate as emergency contacts, beneficiaries, and next of kin. No explanations. Just erased. Brianna's cousin, who still followed my old business account, saw the local article and shared it on social. With a caption that read, "Guess the quiet ones really do come out on top." That post got a lot of likes. One from Brianna herself. I didn't respond. Because my silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Of boundaries. Of purpose. Of the kind of peace you earn when you stop letting other people's shame become your burden. But I wasn't done yet. Not until they truly understood what it feels like to be left behind. It was a Tuesday when Dad called again. I let it go to voicemail. Lucas, he said, voice thin as tissue. We saw the article. Your mother cried. I don't know if you did that to send a message, but we got it. He paused. I don't know if we deserve your forgiveness. Maybe we don't. But we're still your family. That word again. Family. Funny how people only remember it when they need something. I didn't call back. Instead, I mailed them a check. Not out of pity, but strategy. Just enough to cover their unpaid rent and utilities. No note. No return address. Just a bank logo and a cold figure. 2 weeks later, I drove through town and saw Mom and Dad on their porch sipping coffee in silence. Dad looked thinner. Mom looked older than I remembered. They saw me drive by. I didn't stop. Because helping someone survive isn't the same as letting them back in. Later that night, Jen texted me. Saw what you did. They won't say it, but they're shook. You've changed. Not just stronger, something else. Sharper. She wasn't wrong. Grief changes you. But betrayal? Betrayal builds you. If you let it. If you stop looking for closure and start building your own damn doors. And then came the final message from Nate. This time, no voicemail. Just a text. I lost everything. She's gone. They won't talk to me. You were the only one who ever actually gave a damn. I stared at it. Deleted it. Because here's what no one tells you, some people don't need revenge. They are the consequence. Nate would live the rest of his life chasing the ghost of a brother he buried for ego. And Brianna? She'd learned that betrayal doesn't earn you freedom. It earns you exile. Mine was quiet. But it was absolute. The funny thing about being discarded? Eventually, the people who tossed you aside come crawling back, not because they love you, but because they remember what you used to give. Stability. Loyalty. The kind of strength they never understood until it was gone. That winter, I got a letter from Brianna. A real one. Pen on paper. No return address, just shaky handwriting and perfume I hadn't smelled in years. She wrote about the child, our daughter, she had the nerve to say. How hard things were. How she wished I could be in her life. Not as her father, obviously, she added, but as someone who still means something. I folded the letter once. Slipped it into a drawer. I didn't respond. Because I won't be her backup plan. Not her emotional janitor. She made her choice when she ripped a man's life apart and handed it to his brother like a birthday gift. And now? She gets to live with it. Alone. As for Nate, last I heard, he'd moved to Alabama. Working part-time at a marina, living in a one-room studio above a bait shop. People say he talks about the brother he lost like it was an accident, like he tripped and fell into betrayal. Mom and Dad? They keep trying. A birthday card here. A voicemail there. No apologies. Just that slow, aching tone of people realizing their golden son wasn't gold at all and the one they threw out with the trash was the real spine of the family. I don't hate them. That would give them power. Instead, I let them drift in the space I left behind. A space where love used to live now filled with silence. A silence they chose when they sided with betrayal. That silence is my revenge. It echoes louder than any scream. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Spring came early that year. My trailer sat in the middle of a field that had started to bloom with wildflowers. No neighbors. No traffic. Just quiet, the kind that used to feel like loneliness but now felt like armor. I'd made it. Not rich. Not famous. But whole. Something I never thought I'd be again. One morning, I opened my mailbox to find a thick envelope. Legal stationery. Inside, documents. Deed transfer. My parents' signatures. No note. No explanation. They were signing over what little land they had left. It was supposed to be an olive branch. An inheritance wrapped in guilt. I shredded it. Not because I didn't want it, but because it cost too much. Not in dollars. In dignity. You see, forgiveness isn't a gift you hand out like candy. It's earned. And none of them had paid the price. Not Nate, who never once showed up in person to face the wreckage he caused. Not Brianna, who only reached out when her world collapsed. And not my parents, who still couldn't say the words out loud, we were wrong. We failed you. So I gave them nothing. No rage. No grace. No seat at the table I built from broken pieces. The story ended exactly where it should, with me. Still standing. Still building. Not because I'm some hero, but because I chose to stop bleeding for people who sharpen the knife. Let them talk. Let them pray. Let them remember me however they need to in order to sleep at night. But they'll know every time their phone doesn't ring, every holiday that passes without a knock at the door, they'll know. This is what it feels like. To lose a good man for good.